This is Annette Raynor, and I have been a facilitator for religious education for the last 12 years, specifically at St. Mary's. And throughout the years that I've worked with young people in understanding our faith, the one thing that I found over and over again is that as we talked about the life of Jesus, it seemed somewhat like a fable. In other words, these fantastic stories of miracles, and no one doubts how wonderful Jesus was, but it just seems that he's somewhat of a mythical figure, someone that we can't really feel or touch. And the truth is that Jesus is an historical figure, and we sometimes forget that. You see, whether you believe that Jesus is the Son of God or not, Jesus was a man, and he did live, and he was born. So what I've done is I've prepared this short little presentation to show you the world during the life of Jesus, what we know, where he lived, where he was born. First, let's start with some geography. Let's take a look at a map of the Middle East in 30 BC. And on this map, you see a large red area. That red area is important because that is the entire Roman Empire at the time. As you can see, it's pretty extensive. The small green part in the middle is Judea. So right where the arrow is pointing, that little green area, that's Judea, which is the region in which Jesus lived. Let's zoom into that area and take a closer look at it as it compares to a current day map. So we have to the left the Judea area, 30 BC to 200 AD, and then over to the right, what you see is a map in 2005. Where is that current area today? And what we can see is that we have Jerusalem, Gaza, Palestinian. So Jesus lived in the region that is today part of Israel, part of the Palestinian state, and the Gaza Strip. And as you may know, that's an area of great turmoil because the Palestinians and Israel is at war most of the time over the area called the Gaza Strip, which is the area in which Jesus lived. Let's zoom in even closer to the ancient map so we can see some of the names of the cities of that Judea region. And when we take a closer look, we see names that we've heard before. Take a look. There's Cana. We know that the wedding at Cana is where Jesus turned the water into wine. Nazareth, that's where Jesus lived. That's where he grew up. Bethlehem, that's where Jesus was born. The Jordan River, Sea of Galilee, Capernaum. These are all cities that we've heard of over and over again in the readings from the Bible. These are real places. These are not fictional, mythical places, but these are real places, as you can see, depicted on the ancient map. Let's talk a little bit about how those maps are dated. We see that the map, the ancient map, runs from a period that is BC through AD. Well, what do those terms stand for? BC is the abbreviation for before Christ. AD is the abbreviation which means Anno Domini, and that's Latin, meaning in the year of our Lord. And if your parents are my age, we were incorrectly told when we were young that AD stood for after the death, but that's incorrect. What it really stood for was Anno Domini, and that meant in the year of our Lord. Let's think about that for a second. This man, Jesus, made such an impression on the world that our marking of time is denoted by his life, by his birth specifically. More recently, you will see that many times they drop BC and AD in favor of CE, which stands for the Common Era. People do that because they feel it's more politically correct than using the terms before Christ and in the year of our Lord. But even if you change the abbreviation to CE, that stands for the Common Era, it still does not change the historical event that caused us to reset the timeline. And the fact remains, whether you call it CE, BC, or AD, that the event that caused us to remark and restart our calendar is the birth of the man Jesus Christ. Let's take a look at who was in charge at the time Jesus lived. We saw the red area of the map, which was the Roman Empire, and the Roman Empire was ruled by Caesar. And Caesar simply means king. That's not the person's name. Caesar means king. And the Caesar at the time was Caesar Augustus. He became king at the age of 19 in the year 44 BC. He reigned until he died in the year 14 AD. He was 76 years old, and Caesar Augustus was the first Roman emperor. He was in rule at the time that Jesus was born. When Caesar Augustus died, his stepson Tiberius became Caesar. Tiberius Caesar was the Roman emperor at the time of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, and it was believed that Jesus was crucified on April 3rd of 33 AD. So we know that Tiberius was in charge when Jesus died. Tiberius died at the age of 79 in the year 37 AD, which was 4 years after the death of Christ. Let's take a look at all of these events on a timeline. So we see here it's 44 BC, and Caesar Augustus becomes king, becomes Caesar. Somewhere between, and it's estimated, 3 to 4 BC, Jesus is born. So what we thought he was born at 0, there's some speculation that it was really closer to somewhere that would be 3 to 4 BC. In 14 AD, Caesar Augustus dies, and his stepson Tiberius becomes Caesar. There's no speculation on that. That, once again, is a historical fact. In 33 AD, Jesus is crucified. And then 4 years after that, in 37 AD, Caesar Tiberius dies. So from the time Jesus was born to the time Jesus died, he lived in a region that was ruled by 2 men. At birth, it was Caesar Augustus. When he died, it was Tiberius Caesar. The denarius. In the Roman currency system, the denarius was the coin in circulation at the time. Its plural is denarii. It's a small silver coin, and it was first minted in the year 211 BC. It became the most common coin produced and in circulation, and was derived from the Latin denarii, which means containing 10, as the value of a denarius was 10 asses, what we would call donkeys today. The denarius in size was equivalent to our dime, but its value would be equivalent to what is our penny in current day. Let's take a closer look at the denarius. Specifically, we're going to look at a Tiberius denarius, because during the rule of Tiberius, which was from 14 AD to 37 AD, the denarius had a picture of Tiberius on the front, and it had a picture of his mother, Livia, on the back. This is no different than what we do today with our current currency, as we have the images of our presidents on our money. So back then it was common for those who were in charge, those who were ruling the region, to have their faces on the currency. So what we're looking at here is a close-up of the Tiberius denarius, and this would have been in circulation at the time Jesus lived. The denarius is referenced in the Bible many times. Probably the most famous story is when Jesus was asked, by the Sanhedrin. They said to him, and they were trying to trick him, "Tell us then, what do you think? Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not?" But Jesus, aware of their malice, said, "Why put me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the money for the tax." And they brought him a coin. And Jesus said to them, "Whose likeness and inscription is this?" They said, "Caesar's." Then he said to them, "Render therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's." And this is found in Matthew 22. And again in Matthew 20, for the kingdom of heaven is like a householder who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for a denarius a day, he sent them into his vineyard. Now we turn to John 6. Lifting up his eyes then, and seeing that a multitude was coming to him, Jesus said to Philip, "How are we to buy bread so that these people may eat?" This he said to test him, for he himself knew what he would do. Philip answered him, 200 denarii would not buy enough bread for each of them to even get a little. And then Luke 10. But a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion, and went to him, and bound up his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he set him on his own beast, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him. And the next day he took out 2 denarii, and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, "Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will repay you when I come back." And this passage, of course, is from the story of the Good Samaritan, which is a famous Bible story that shows us how the Samaritan was the third person to pass by a person in distress on the road, and it was only the Samaritan who stopped to help the man. And now we turn to John 12. Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, he who was to betray him, said, "Why was this ointment not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor?" This he said, not that he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief, and as he had the money box, he used to take what was put into it. So once again, another reference during the life of Jesus to the denarii. So after reviewing this information, you ask yourself, is Jesus the Son of God? And the truth is that is a question that only you can answer for yourself. And that is the journey that you start today. As you prepare for confirmation, this is what the preparation is about. We want you to look into both the historical facts as well as the facts of our faith, what you've learned so far, the stories from the Bible. And as you go through all of this information, you have to answer for yourself, is Jesus the Son of God? We know that Jesus the man is a matter of historical fact, and we have a lot of information about his life and the world in which he lived. But the actual question of whether he is the Son of God is for you to decide, because it is a matter of faith. We wish we could take you to the land where Jesus lived, so that as part of your journey, you could see and experience the story of his life, so that you can walk the land in which he walked, see where he was born, or even where he died. But we can't do that. Instead, as a demonstration of historical reference, we invite you this evening to inspect 2 Tiberius denarii in circulation during the life of Christ. Might these coins have passed through the hands of Jesus, or maybe his disciples? Possibly, but at the very least, you will hold an artifact in your hands from the historical period in which Jesus lived. You see, it's our hope, by actually inspecting something that was there during the life of Christ, it will be more real to you. We wish you great success on your journey towards confirmation and the discovery of your faith.